Breaking news. Ladies and gentlemen, the internet is on fire. The streets are divided, and somewhere in Queens, Nas is probably sipping tea wondering, did Jim Jones really just compare himself to me? Oh yes, it happened. And not just in some dusty corner of the internet. This went down on a podcast with Fat Joe and Jadakiss. Two guys who could start a rap beef just by ordering lunch. One innocent conversation turned into a generational civil war in hip-hop. And let me tell you, folks, it's uglier than Dipset's early 2000s pink fur coats. But wait, it gets better. Because this isn't just about music. No. This is about ego, legacy, and the dark underbelly of the Billboard charts. This is about who the real king of influence is. And Jim Jones is out here swinging harder than your uncle at a family barbecue when someone disrespects his domino game. So buckle up because I've got anonymous sources, leaked conversations, and enough sarcasm to power the entire shade-throwing department of the internet. The Jim vs. Nas saga. Oh, it's just getting started. The thing about scandals is they never knock politely before entering the chat. They just kick the door in, spill a drink on the carpet, and start screaming in your living room. And that is exactly what happened when Jim Jones found himself sitting across from Fat Joe and Jadakiss, two men who have mastered the art of asking a question so casually you almost don't realize they just handed you the mic and a live grenade. And Jim, being Jim, pulled the pin with confidence. It started harmless enough, a little reminiscing, a little banter about music and influence, the kind of small talk that makes you think this will be another chill hip-hop nostalgia session. But then Fat Joe mentions a clip from Instagram. A young fan boldly declaring that Jim Jones influenced Nas, not the other way around. And the oxygen in the room instantly changed because when you drop Nas's name in the same sentence as influenced by and it is not immediately followed by a list of people from every borough in New York, you are entering dangerous airspace. And this wasn't just a fan opinion floating in the ether. This was on video, with a confident 20-something explaining how Jim's belts, style, and swagger shaped him more than any Nas album ever could. And in hip-hop, visuals like that spread faster than a bad rumor in a small town. Now, for the older generation, this is heresy. This is rewriting the sacred scripture of 90s rap. But for the younger crowd, it's just reality. They did not grow up with Illmatic on repeat. They did not watch the East Coast versus West Coast drama unfold on MTV News. They grew up with Dipset music videos, Harlem street fashion, and the sound of Jim Jones' We Fly High blasting through MySpace pages and early YouTube uploads. But here's where it gets good, because when Fat Joe brings it up, Jim doesn't flinch, doesn't deny, doesn't get flustered. He leans into it with the kind of calm that says he knows exactly what is about to happen on the internet, and, instead of shutting it down, he pivots. He reminds everyone that yes, Nas was his idol when he was young. Yes, he studied the man's wordplay, his dress sense, his music, but then he drops the line that sets the tone for everything else. Your rivals will be idols. It's a deceptively simple statement, but in the context of hip-hop, it's a Molotov cocktail of competitiveness and confidence, because it basically says, I loved you when I was coming up. But now that I'm in the game, we are equals on this chessboard. For some, that's inspiring. For others, it's the beginning of a beef. And that's when Jim does what any seasoned provocateur does. He slides in the stats, Billboard numbers, gold records, platinum albums, track records that he claims can stand against anyone's. He invites the comparison, telling Fat Joe to pull up Nas's Billboard entries and pull up his, because numbers, in his mind, do not lie. Of course, in hip-hop, numbers are a slippery slope, because if you judge purely by chart positions, you can crown a dozen kings who barely make it into conversations about cultural impact. But Jim is not here for a debate on artistic purity. He is here to remind you he has receipts, and whether you like his style or not, he is still here, still relevant, and still pulling in streams from a generation that couldn't name 3 Nas songs without Googling. And that, right there, is the nerve he is pressing: the generational divide. Jim knows the 22-year-old fans don't care about Source magazine covers from 1996. They care about what's popping on Instagram this week, and he plays to that audience without apology. It's a calculated move. And make no mistake, Jim Jones is a chess player when it comes to staying visible. He has lived through enough industry shifts to know that relevance is a currency you have to keep spending. And if that means poking the hornet's nest of Nas fandom to get his name trending, so be it. What makes this even juicier is the way Jadakiss sits in the cut, listening, smiling, and then stepping in just long enough to remind everyone that hip-hop has a terrible memory when it comes to honoring its pioneers. It's like he is the designated adult in the room, making sure no one forgets the foundation while the kids are busy arguing about who has the biggest house on the block. But Jim's not backing down. And why should he, when every repost, every angry tweet, every think piece about whether he crossed a line is another notch in his visibility belt? It's almost too perfect, because the entire conversation feels like one of those reality TV reunion episodes where someone says, "I'm not here to start drama," right before flipping the table. And the best part, Jim doesn't have to flip anything. He just has to keep talking, because the more he explains himself, the more the lines blur between respect and rivalry. This is how you manufacture a moment in modern hip-hop. You mix nostalgia, controversy, generational pride, and just enough statistical ammunition to keep the debate from being purely emotional. And here's the kicker: whether or not Jim actually believes he is more influential than Nas is irrelevant, because the real play here is that you are talking about him. In the era of algorithm-driven attention economies, that's the win. And if you think he doesn't know that, just look at his Instagram, where after all this blew up, he posted with a caption that basically said, "I got you all worked up online, now I'm going back to my good life." Translation: mission accomplished. Now, here's where the so-called facts start to drip like a leaky faucet that no one in hip-hop really wants to fix because the mess is just too entertaining. Because as soon as the Jim Jones versus Nas conversation started to trend, the exclusive leaks began showing up faster than uninvited cousins at a barbecue. And according to my extremely reliable network of anonymous sources, which may or may not include a guy who works at a sneaker store in Harlem and a former intern for a music blog that shut down in 2013, Jim Jones has been quietly compiling a dossier of his own influence receipts for years, a secret archive of photos, magazine clippings, and behind-the-scenes tour footage, all designed to prove that not only was he a style icon, he was the style icon that the new generation worshipped without even knowing it. One folder in this mythical archive allegedly contains candid shots of early 2000s rappers wearing the exact same leather jackets Jim debuted in a Dipset video. And the rumor is he has time-stamped evidence that Nas himself once wore a piece eerily similar to a custom jacket Jim had commissioned months earlier, which in the court of public opinion might as well be a smoking gun. Another source claims there are old studio session tapes where industry insiders talk openly about Dipset setting trends, while Nas's team was focused on more traditional, lyrical projects, which in the narrative Jim is crafting makes him the one dictating the culture while Nas preserved the heritage. But it doesn't stop there, because the fake investigative trail we're following has now unearthed alleged text messages from a major label executive, complaining that Nas's album rollout in 2006 felt dated compared to the marketing genius of Jim Jones, who was flooding mixtapes, DVDs, and club appearances like he was running a one-man PR army. And this is where the public reaction starts to mutate from disbelief to curiosity, because no matter how loyal you are to Nas, the idea that Jim might have actually out-hustled him in certain eras is not entirely impossible. Social media has already run wild with threads analyzing side-by-side images of the two rappers' wardrobes, event appearances, and even their cars, with one viral post joking that Jim Jones was the Harlem Nas but with better winter coats, and the comments, oh, the comments, they are pure digital chaos, with people digging up old interviews, finding moments where Nas gave Dipset a nod, and twisting them into proof that Jim was secretly the one to watch all along. Of course, the backlash is just as loud, with Nas fans posting 20-minute video essays breaking down the poetry, the innovation, and the cultural reach of Illmatic, as if reminding Jim and the world that there is no comparison when you're talking about artistry versus trendsetting. But Jim thrives on this noise, because in the fake world of our investigation, every post, every angry quote tweet, and every meme of his smirking face is like oxygen to a fire he doesn't want to put out. Then comes the cherry on top, a so-called leaked voice note from a well-connected industry veteran claiming that Jim Jones was invited to a private ROC Nation brunch years ago where Nas was also present. And during a conversation about longevity, Nas supposedly told Jim that he respected how he stayed relevant in the social media era, a comment which Jim allegedly took as quiet confirmation of his equal footing. Is the voice note real? Who cares? Because in the court of public opinion, plausible gossip is more powerful than hard evidence. And the blogs are eating it up like it's Sunday dinner. And now, thanks to these leaks, the scandal has grown legs, arms, and a whole second head. Because it's no longer just a comparison made in passing by Fat Joe and Jadakiss, it's a full-blown narrative war about who shaped the culture more effectively in the past 20 years. Even TikTok has joined the circus, with creators reenacting fake moments between Nas and Jim, splicing in footage from old Bet Awards shows, and overlaying them with dramatic music like it's an episode of a Netflix doc. Meanwhile, the luxury spending angle has crept into the storyline, with allegations that Jim Jones once threw $250,000 at a single fashion week just to ensure Dipset's presence was the talk of the town. An extravagant stunt that supposedly left other rappers scrambling to keep up in the style department. And as with any good scandal, the corruption whispers aren't far behind, because someone claims to have seen receipts linking Jim to shady promotional deals with nightclubs, where his appearance fees included custom designer outfits that mysteriously debuted in music videos a week later, reinforcing his image as a style-first, business-savvy player. None of this is proven. None of this is meant to be. But in the chaotic ecosystem of viral hip-hop commentary, proof is a luxury nobody waits for, because the performance of believing or disbelieving is the content itself. Now Nas, for his part, has remained quiet in this narrative we're spinning. But the silence only fuels more theories. Some say he's ignoring it because it's beneath him. Others say he's quietly gathering his own receipts for the day he decides to speak, and the more romantic corners of the fanbase think he's just laughing it off in a Brooklyn brownstone somewhere, sipping wine and listening to jazz. But in the meantime, Jim has gone from responding on a podcast to indirectly doubling down in Instagram stories, posting cryptic quotes about respect, legacy, and haters without names. The kind of vague messaging that can be read in 100 different ways and keeps people arguing in the comments. And that is exactly the energy you need if your goal is to stay in the trending topics list. Because now every blog, from hip-hop gossip outlets to lifestyle magazines, is covering the beef as if it were an official battle, dissecting outfits, analyzing lyrics from 10 years ago for hidden jabs, and making wild predictions about whether this will lead to a diss track war in 2025. What we are watching, whether we admit it or not, is a masterclass in modern clout management. Jim Jones doesn't have to win the argument. He just has to make sure the argument never ends. And just when you think the noise around Jim Jones versus Nas is about to fade into the background like last year's Twitter beef, the story takes a sharp turn into territory that feels ripped straight out of a political thriller. Because according to whispers from highly credible insiders who may or may not spend more time on Reddit than in actual recording studios, government agencies have started poking around, not because they care about who is the real style icon of hip-hop, but because this back-and-forth has allegedly uncovered a string of suspicious financial moves tied to both camps over the last decade, and now people are throwing around words like money laundering, offshore accounts, and unregistered promotional deals as if we're not talking about rap music but the plot of an HBO drama. The alleged trigger for this so-called investigation was a leaked spreadsheet supposedly showing that certain fashion brands paid Jim Jones appearance fees that were mysteriously routed through shell companies with exotic names like Velvet Street Holdings and Iconic Threads International, which, if you believe the gossip, were also linked to overseas real estate purchases that nobody can fully explain. One anonymous music industry accountant has even claimed that the IRS quietly opened a file on Jim after noticing that his reported income one year was a fraction of what he flaunted on social media. And while the authenticity of these claims is as questionable as a $50 Rolex, they have been enough to send Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok into full meltdown mode, with armchair detectives piecing together every photo, every trip, every Instagram live as if they're building a case for trial. And because fake news thrives on escalation, Nas's name is now being dragged into the financial drama too, with certain blogs claiming that a charity he once endorsed is under review for mismanagement of funds. A phrase vague enough to make it sound sinister without providing any actual substance. Of course, in reality, none of this has been confirmed by any legitimate outlet, but that doesn't matter when the entertainment value of speculation is this high, because the more you mix serious accusations with celebrity drama, the more people can't look away. The ripple effect has been immediate, with sponsors allegedly getting nervous, brands putting certain collaborations on hold, and industry events suddenly looking at their guest lists a little more carefully, because no one wants to be caught in the crossfire of a viral scandal that could implode at any second. Then, as if on cue, a so-called leaked audio clip hits the internet, ALLEGEDLY, capturing a heated phone call between two top executives debating whether to drop Jim from an upcoming project. With one voice saying it's too risky and the other insisting the controversy is actually good for business because it keeps his name in the headlines. That clip alone has been played and replayed thousands of times, analyzed for background noise, voice patterns, and even the type of phone used, with fans convinced they've identified the people involved, despite no one actually confirming it's real. Meanwhile, the narrative that Jim is playing 4D chess with his public image has taken on a life of its own, with fans and detractors alike predicting that all of this will culminate in a surprise album drop full of thinly veiled shots at Nas, Fat Joe, and anyone else who's questioned his legacy. And Nas, true to form, has remained publicly silent, which only fuels the theory that he's waiting for the perfect moment to deliver a lyrical nuke that will shut down the debate once and for all. In the absence of actual music, the commentary cycle has shifted to hypothetical outcomes, with YouTube analysts breaking down what a diss track war between these two would even look like, comparing styles, delivery, and fanbase loyalty as if it's a boxing match. But the fake consequences in our unfolding saga don't stop at music. Now there are whispers of possible subpoenas, with gossip pages claiming that federal interest in certain financial dealings could result in both artists being called to testify in unrelated investigations, a claim so vague and convoluted that it's basically designed to make people panic without offering any real clarity. The more absurd the details get, the more people believe them, and that's the beauty of this kind of viral commentary. Plausibility is optional, but entertainment is mandatory, and as the story snowballs, the backlash is evolving too. Because now you've got old collaborators, ex-managers, and forgotten industry figures crawling out of the woodwork to give exclusive interviews where they just happen to share juicy but unverifiable anecdotes that make the drama sound even deeper than it probably is. One former tour promoter claims Jim once skipped out on a contract to attend a secret meeting in Paris with a luxury brand executive, a meeting that supposedly led to an under-the-table endorsement deal worth six figures, and whether or not it happened, the detail of Paris is enough to make people nod and say, yeah, that sounds shady. The scandal has now infected the merch world too, with bootleggers printing Team Jim and Team Nas shirts, selling them on Etsy, and marketing them as part of the culture war, proving once again that even fake feuds are good for business. And the craziest part, the very platforms amplifying all of this drama are also monetizing it, with YouTube creators, TikTokers, and Twitter Spaces hosts racking up views, donations, and subscribers by acting as if they are the investigative arm of Rolling Stone. This is no longer just a celebrity comparison gone wrong in the wild, fabricated world we've built. It's a full-blown cultural spectacle with alleged crimes, economic fallout, and reputational warfare, and no one involved seems particularly eager to shut it down. If anything, the silence from both Nas and Jim is the biggest performance of all. A strategic withholding that keeps fans refreshing their feeds, keeps blogs publishing new leaks, and keeps the controversy breathing like it's on life support that never runs out of battery. By this point, it's no longer about who's better or who started what. It's about who can manipulate the audience's attention more effectively, who can play the long game of staying relevant in a news cycle designed to chew people up and spit them out within days. And right now, Jim Jones looks like he's not just surviving, he's orchestrating, letting the chaos swirl while he positions himself for whatever big reveal, clapback, or project he's cooking up behind the scenes. So here we are, standing at the edge of a cliff where the truth, the lies, and the pure entertainment value all blend into one chaotic storm. And the only question that matters now is, are you buying into the hype or are you seeing through the smoke? Because if you think this story ends here, you clearly haven't been paying attention. The next twist is probably already loading in someone's draft folder right now, and when it drops, you'll want to be the first to say you saw it coming. So here's the deal. Hit that like button so hard it leaves a dent in your screen. Drop your wildest conspiracy theory in the comments so we can crown the best detective in this community. And if you're feeling brave, share this video with someone who swears they know the real story and watch them spiral. Subscribe if you want to be here when the next leaked clip, anonymous source, or outrageous claim turns this entire situation upside down again. Because trust me, in a saga like this, the drama isn't over, it's just warming up. And you do not want to miss the next chapter.